Turn on your shower tomorrow morning. Before you step in, turn the handle all the way to cold. Stand there for a moment and feel the air coming off the water. Feel the temperature. Now step in. What happens in the next 3 seconds inside your body is the most violent chemical event you will experience all day. More adrenaline than an argument, more norepinephrine than a car accident, more endorphins than an hour of exercise. Every system in your body will activate simultaneously in a cascade that evolution spent 3 million years perfecting. A cascade designed for one purpose only: to keep you alive when your environment suddenly turns hostile. And then, roughly 60 seconds later, something else will happen. Something your body has not done properly in years. It will calm down. Fully. Completely. In a way that no pill and no meditation and no breathing exercise has been able to achieve.
Because the system that calms you down is the same system that was triggered by the shock, and it cannot activate without the shock coming first. You have been trying to relax without first giving your body a reason to deploy its recovery machinery. Cold water is that reason. And the evolutionary biology of why it works is the most elegant drug delivery system I have ever encountered in any species. I spent my life studying how organisms respond to their environments, how finches adapt their beaks to available food, how iguanas adjust their body size to island resources, how every living thing is shaped by the specific pressures it faces. And the single greatest pressure that shaped your physiology, the pressure that built more of your internal systems than any other, was not predation. It was not starvation. It was temperature. The management of body heat in an environment that was constantly, relentlessly trying to take it away. The thermal crisis. You are a warm-blooded animal.
Your body maintains an internal temperature of approximately 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of what the outside temperature is doing. This is called thermoregulation, and it is one of the most energy-expensive processes in your entire biology. Roughly 60 to 70% of the calories you consume are burned not to move your muscles, not to power your brain, but to maintain your body temperature. You are fundamentally a heating system that happens to think. Your ancestors on the African savanna dealt with heat during the day and cold at night. They waded through cold rivers. They were caught in cold rain. They slept on cold ground. They experienced rapid temperature changes constantly, daily, for millions of years. And their bodies, your body, evolved an elaborate response system to handle exactly this kind of thermal stress. When cold water hits your skin, your body does not interpret this as a minor inconvenience. It interprets it as a survival threat, a threat to the core temperature that every chemical reaction in your body depends on. Enzymes function within a narrow temperature range. Below that range, they slow. Below a critical threshold, they stop. If your core temperature drops just 2 degrees Celsius, your organs begin to malfunction. Drop 5 degrees, and you are dead. Your body knows this. Every cell in your body knows this. And the response to cold water on your skin is proportional to the seriousness of the threat. The first 3 seconds. The moment cold water contacts your skin, temperature receptors called thermoreceptors fire. These are specialized nerve endings distributed across your entire body surface, with the highest density on your face, your chest, and your hands. They detect the rate of temperature change, not just the absolute temperature. A sudden drop triggers a far more intense signal than a gradual one. This is why stepping into cold water is shocking, but wading in slowly is tolerable. The receptors respond to the derivative, the speed of change, not just the value. These signals travel through peripheral sensory nerves to the spinal cord and then to the hypothalamus, the region of your brain that controls thermoregulation. The hypothalamus receives the signal and initiates a coordinated whole-body response in less than 1 second. This is faster than conscious thought. You do not decide to respond to cold water.
Your brainstem and hypothalamus respond before your cortex has even finished processing what happened. The gasp you make when cold water hits you is not voluntary. It is a brainstem reflex. Your conscious mind is a spectator to a response that was hardwired into your nervous system before your species learned to speak. The hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system. This is the fight or flight branch of your autonomic nervous system, the branch that prepares your body for immediate action. And the activation is not subtle. It is massive.
The adrenal medulla, the inner core of your adrenal glands sitting on top of your kidneys, dumps norepinephrine and adrenaline into your bloodstream simultaneously. This is the same chemical cocktail your body releases when you are about to be attacked by a predator. The same chemicals that allow a mother to lift a car off her child. The same chemicals that soldiers experience in combat. Cold water triggers the identical hormonal cascade because from your body's perspective, a sudden drop in skin temperature is an emergency of the same magnitude. Norepinephrine concentrations in the blood increase by 200 to 300% within the first 30 seconds of cold water exposure. This is not a small increase. This is a pharmacological dose of a neurotransmitter being released by your own body. To achieve the same blood concentration of norepinephrine through medication, you would need an intravenous drip in a hospital setting. Your adrenal glands produce it in seconds, for free, triggered by nothing more than cold water on skin. What norepinephrine does to your brain? Norepinephrine is not just a stress hormone. It is the primary neurotransmitter of attention, alertness, and mood regulation in the brain. It is the molecule that every single antidepressant in the SNRI class, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, is designed to increase. These drugs work by preventing the reabsorption of norepinephrine at the synapse, keeping it active longer. They take 4 to 6 weeks to reach full effect. They have side effects including nausea, insomnia, sexual dysfunction, and withdrawal symptoms. And they increase norepinephrine availability by a fraction of what cold water exposure achieves in 30 seconds. I am not telling you to stop taking medication. I am telling you what the chemistry does. Cold water triggers a norepinephrine release that exceeds what most psychiatric medications are designed to produce. It does this through a pathway that evolution built specifically for rapid deployment, a pathway that has been tested and refined across millions of years of thermal stress in every environment your ancestors survived. The norepinephrine floods the locus ceruleus, a small nucleus in the brainstem that is the primary source of norepinephrine for the entire brain. The locus ceruleus projects to the prefrontal cortex, enhancing executive function and decision-making. It projects to the amygdala, modulating the fear response. It projects to the hippocampus, enhancing memory consolidation. It projects to the anterior cingulate cortex, the region involved in motivation and error detection. Every major cognitive system in your brain receives a surge of the molecule most associated with clarity, focus, and elevated mood. From cold water, in 30 seconds. The vascular gymnastics. While your brain is being flooded with norepinephrine, your cardiovascular system is performing what I can only describe as gymnastics. The moment cold water hits your skin, the blood vessels in your extremities constrict. This is called peripheral vasoconstriction. The smooth muscle in the walls of the arterioles, supplying your skin, your hands, your feet, your arms and legs, contracts, narrowing the vessels and reducing blood flow to the surface. This is a survival mechanism. Your body is pulling warm blood away from the surface, away from the cold, and redirecting it to your core, to your organs, to the structures that must stay warm to keep you alive. Blood pressure increases, heart rate increases, cardiac output increases. Your heart is pumping harder and faster to maintain circulation through the constricted vascular bed. The blood that has been redirected to your core now passes through your organs at a higher flow rate. Your liver, your kidneys, your brain, your heart itself all receive a surge of warm, oxygen-rich blood. This is the vascular equivalent of a deep tissue flush. Blood that may have been moving sluggishly through peripheral capillaries is now being driven through your core circulation with force. And then you get out of the cold water, and the reverse happens. The peripheral vessels dilate. Blood rushes back to the surface. The vascular bed expands. Blood pressure normalizes. Heart rate decreases. And the overall effect is that your entire circulatory system has just been exercised. Constricted and dilated, squeezed and released. The smooth muscle in your vessel walls has been activated in a way that sitting in a warm room all day never achieves. This is why cold water exposure has been shown to improve circulation over time.
The repeated cycle of vasoconstriction and vasodilation trains the smooth muscle in your blood vessel walls the same way resistance training trains skeletal muscle. The vessels become more responsive, more elastic, more capable of adjusting to changing demands. You are exercising your circulatory system without moving a single skeletal muscle. There is another adaptation that cold water reactivates, one that most people do not know they possess. You have two types of fat in your body: white adipose tissue, which is the fat you know about, the fat that stores energy and insulates your body and accumulates around your waist as you age, and brown adipose tissue, which does something entirely different. Brown fat burns energy to produce heat. It is packed with mitochondria, the organelles that generate cellular energy, and those mitochondria contain a protein called uncoupling protein 1 that short-circuits the normal energy production pathway and converts calories directly into thermal energy. Brown fat is a furnace. Infants have large deposits of brown fat because they cannot shiver. They cannot generate heat through muscular contraction the way adults can. Brown fat keeps them alive in cold environments. As you age, your brown fat deposits shrink. By adulthood, most people have only small remnants of brown fat around their collarbones, along their spine, and around their kidneys. Or so researchers believed. In 2009, PET scan studies revealed that adults retain far more brown fat than previously thought, and that cold exposure activates it. Subjects exposed to mild cold for 2 hours showed significant brown fat activation on their scans. Repeated cold exposure over weeks increased the volume and activity of brown fat.
The body was growing more furnace tissue in response to thermal demand. This matters because active brown fat does not just generate heat. It consumes glucose and fatty acids from the bloodstream to fuel its thermal output. It improves insulin sensitivity. It reduces circulating triglycerides. It increases basal metabolic rate. People with more active brown fat have measurably better metabolic profiles than people with less. And cold water is the most potent natural activator of brown fat ever identified. Your ancestors had abundant brown fat. They needed it. They slept in cold, woke in cold, travelled through cold, and their brown fat burned continuously to maintain core temperature. You live in a heated home, drive a heated car, work in a heated office, and your brown fat has atrophied from disuse. Cold water wakes it up. Not metaphorically, measurably, visibly on a PET scan.
The fat that evolution built to keep your ancestors alive in cold environments is still inside you, dormant, waiting for a thermal signal that never comes because you have engineered cold out of your life entirely. I observed in my studies of animal physiology that every system in the body that is not regularly stressed begins to atrophy. Muscles that are not used shrink, bones that are not loaded thin, and blood vessels that are never asked to constrict and dilate lose their ability to do so efficiently. Your ancestors stressed their vascular system with temperature changes daily. You live in a climate-controlled box at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Your blood vessels have not been properly exercised in years. Cold water is the exercise they are missing. The immune activation. Here is where the story becomes remarkable. In 2014, researchers at Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands conducted an experiment that should not have worked. They trained a group of volunteers in cold water exposure techniques for 10 days. then injected them with bacterial endotoxin, a component of bacterial cell walls that triggers a powerful immune inflammatory response in every human being. Every person injected with endotoxin gets sick. Fever, headache, nausea, shivering. It is one of the most reliable immune provocations in medical research. The cold water-trained group produced significantly less pro-inflammatory cytokines than the control group. They had fewer symptoms. They recovered faster. Their immune systems responded to the bacterial threat, but did not overreact. The inflammatory cascade that normally spirals upward, producing the miserable symptoms of sickness, was modulated, controlled, dialed down to an appropriate level rather than an excessive one. This should not have been possible.
The prevailing view in immunology was that the innate immune response to endotoxin was automatic, uncontrollable, beyond the reach of voluntary influence. The cold water-trained subjects proved otherwise. Their sympathetic nervous system activation, the massive norepinephrine release triggered by cold exposure, suppressed the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines while simultaneously increasing the production of the anti-inflammatory cytokine interleukin-10. This is the same cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway that the vagus nerve operates, but activated from the sympathetic side rather than the parasympathetic side. Cold water activates it through brute force, through the massive sympathetic discharge that dumps norepinephrine into every organ simultaneously. The effect is a recalibration of the immune system from overreactive to appropriately reactive. I studied how organisms adapt their defenses to their environments across hundreds of species.
The principle is always the same. A defense system that is never tested becomes either hyperactive or inactive. An immune system that never encounters real stress, real thermal challenge, real environmental variation loses its calibration. It becomes trigger-happy, reacting to pollen and dust and food proteins as if they were lethal pathogens. Or it becomes sluggish, failing to mount an adequate response when a real threat arrives. Cold water recalibrates the system because cold water is the type of stress your immune system evolved to encounter regularly. It is the training stimulus that keeps the response proportional. The recovery that cannot happen without the shock. Now here is the part that matters most. The part that explains why cold water does something that relaxation techniques alone cannot achieve. After the sympathetic surge, after the norepinephrine flood, after the vasoconstriction and the cardiac acceleration and the immune activation, your body must recover.
It must return to baseline. And the system responsible for that recovery is the parasympathetic nervous system, driven primarily by the vagus nerve. The parasympathetic rebound after cold water exposure is proportional to the intensity of the sympathetic activation that preceded it. This is a fundamental principle of autonomic physiology. The harder the sympathetic system fires, the more powerfully the parasympathetic system responds when the stimulus is removed. It is a pendulum. Pull it further in one direction, and it swings further back in the other. When you step out of cold water, the vagus nerve fires with an intensity it has not reached all day. Heart rate drops not just to baseline, but temporarily below baseline. Heart rate variability, the measure of vagal tone that predicts cardiovascular health better than any other metric, increases significantly. Cortisol levels begin to fall. Digestive function activates. Muscle tension decreases.
The subjective experience is a wave of calm that people who practice cold exposure describe as unlike anything they achieve through meditation or breathing exercises alone. And this is the key. This is the evolutionary logic. You cannot achieve deep parasympathetic recovery without first triggering deep sympathetic activation. The two are coupled. They are designed to operate in sequence. Stress, then recovery. Threat, then restoration. Activation, then repair. Your ancestors experienced this cycle daily. Cold river at dawn, warm sun by mid-morning. Cold rain in the afternoon, fire at night. The oscillation between sympathetic and parasympathetic states was constant, and it kept both systems strong, responsive, and properly calibrated. You have eliminated the oscillation. You live in constant, mild sympathetic activation from psychological stress without the physical sympathetic spike that triggers proportional parasympathetic recovery.
Your nervous system is stuck in a shallow trench of low-grade stress without the deep valley of recovery that cold exposure produces. You are stressed enough to suffer, but never shocked enough to recover. Cold water is the shock. 60 seconds, that is all. The cascade starts before you can think about it, and the recovery follows automatically. Not because you chose to relax, not because you breathed in a specific pattern, because your autonomic nervous system, the system I spent my life studying across hundreds of species, does what it was evolved to do when given the stimulus it was evolved to respond to. What you're actually afraid of. I want to address the resistance you feel. The thought of cold water on your skin produces an aversion that is almost physical. Your body tightens at the thought. Your breathing shallows. You do not want to do it. And this aversion is itself an evolutionary artifact.
Your brain is designed to avoid thermal stress because thermal stress was dangerous in the ancestral environment. Cold rivers could cause hypothermia. Cold rain could kill. The aversion kept you seeking warmth, seeking shelter, seeking fire. It was a survival mechanism. But you are not standing in a freezing river on the savannah. You are standing in a shower with a temperature handle within arm's reach. The threat is not real. The response is real. And the response is exactly what your body needs. The aversion you feel is your brain running ancient threat detection software in a modern environment where the threat has been removed, but the benefit remains. Every adaptation I studied across every species I examined told the same story. The organism that faces controlled stress becomes stronger. The organism that avoids all stress becomes fragile. The bone that is never loaded becomes thin. The muscle that is never worked becomes weak. The immune system that is never challenged becomes dysregulated. And the autonomic nervous system that has never oscillated between sympathetic activation and parasympathetic recovery becomes stuck in a shallow, dysfunctional middle ground where you are never fully alert and never fully at rest. Cold water is the oldest drug on Earth. It predates every plant medicine, every fermented brew, every synthesized compound, and every pharmacy ever built. Your species has been exposed to cold water for the entire duration of its existence. Every river your ancestors crossed, every rain that caught them unsheltered, every cold morning that greeted them before the sun rose, each one triggered the same cascade you can trigger tomorrow morning in your shower. 60 seconds of cold water, 3 seconds of shock, 30 seconds of norepinephrine flooding your brain at concentrations no pill can match. 60 seconds of vascular exercise your blood vessels have not performed in years.
And then the recovery. The deep, automatic, involuntary parasympathetic rebound that your nervous system has been waiting to deploy. The rebound it cannot deploy without the shock that precedes it. I studied nature for 50 years. I traveled the world collecting specimens and observing how life adapts to pressure. And the single most consistent observation I made across every species, every environment, every adaptation, is that the organism that regularly encounters the stresses it evolved to handle is the organism that thrives. Remove the stress and the organism declines. Not because the stress is good, because the recovery from the stress is essential. And the recovery cannot happen without the stress. Turn the handle, step in. 60 seconds. Your body knows exactly what to do. It has known for 3 million years. You just stopped asking it.